I am Madison Timmons.
I'm Chris Soucy.
And we're paranormal specialists who live in the most haunted city on earth, Savannah, Georgia. Every day is Halloween in our line of work, so join us as we spin true tales of haunts, murders, and disturbing Savannah history. I'm Madison.
I'm Chris.
And welcome to the most haunted city on earth. Hello, and welcome back to a mini episode of the most haunted city on earth. My name is Madison Timmons.
I'm Chris Soucy.
And I'm JT Timmons.
And today we are going to talk about a photo that was sent to us by a parajunkie.
Oh, yeah.
So this is Lauren's story. So she emailed me about a week ago from when we're filming this, and because she had contacted us saying like, hey, I have this really insane photo. Can I send it to you? And of course, we were like, absolutely, you can send that to us. And so, so this is her story, and we're going to have Chris live react to it because,
yay,
yes, because he has not seen the photo or heard the story. So
we were sitting in an airport. We were about to head up to. Kentucky for Thanksgiving, and we were in the Tallahassee airport, and I pull this photo up. It's like 4 a.m. there, just opened. I pull the photo up, and I was like, I didn't know what was going on at first, and then I realized what was going on, and I was like, oh. And then I showed her, and she's like half asleep because it's 4 a.m. She's not a morning person at all, and it was like coffee.
It was
like for her, just an immediate espresso shot where she shot up, and she was like, oh my gosh.
What in tarnation?
You were very much like, what in tarnation? We both were. We were like, what?
Or
so
like I
yeah,
say,
Lauren's been
Lauren's
been a parajunkie for a few months now, and we're actually meeting up with her at the end of this month. She's coming to Savannah,
cool.
so we're gonna grab a coffee with her.
And we'll be like, so are you still seeing this thing? Because when Chris sees
maybe we need to bring her to the table.
Right,
yeah,
right,
hey,
exactly.
That'd be cool. All right.
So Lauren titled the email saying, nowhere is safe in Appalachia, I guess. And so I was like, oh, you're probably right in that. So for context, this was taken fall 2009, grandma emoji, when I was on a church retreat in high school. Try as I might, I can't remember what that name of the place was, but it was a facility that has lots of cabins that was mostly used for church retreats. It's somewhere in Tennessee, a kind of middle of nowhere, but with a Waffle House kind of place. I know exactly the type of place you're talking about. But I was just taking various pictures of the scenery. This place basically just had cabins, picnic tables, and a swing set or two. No decorative things like statues or totem poles or anything anywhere. This was taken by a Sony digital camera of some kind that I got in approximately 07 or 08. So it's definitely not my finger on the lens or anything. I've included another picture taken moments later that includes the right side of the swing, so you can reference that. There should be nothing there. Also, I saw something that looked exactly like this walking into my kitchen about a year and a half ago. So that's fun.
Nope.
Melting emoji. Let me know what y'all think. That was a lot. Thanks again. Y'all are the best. Thank you, Lauren.
So I'm gonna give my phone because it's a little bit bigger.
Yeah.
And the top one is the ghosty photo, and the bottom one is the photo for comparison. Here you go, Chris.
And it was taken on a digital camera.
Nope.
I saw it immediately.
Nope.
No, you gotta look at it.
You gotta see it.
You gotta look at it. There.
You gotta see it.
I see it.
Hold on. Let's zoom
Okay.
in.
Oh God.
So, yeah, no.
So I'd like to,
and we talk about this all the time. Is the look behind when people describe it? That's absolutely it. Because
and that's the comparison
if you ask me to come up with it, it's like, well, that's a man standing there with a black thing on his head. However, there are certain things when you immediately look at it that tip you off to the unsettled. One of them is the depth of black that it is, because it is not a question of contrast, and you certainly can't wear something like that not in the mid to 2000s. There was no black that looked quite like that, not in daylight.
And there was no morph suits either at that time.
That's right.
So
and even if there were, because of the amount of light, you would have a totally different contour to it. So yeah, that is
awful, right?
Awful. And it is Hat Man without a hat.
Right.
Yeah.
You know and if you're just listening to this, it is the level of unsettling is more just having steeped in Appalachian, folklore. And, if you saw it, you didn't. If you heard it, you didn't. If you hear your name, you didn't.
Oh, yeah.
The reason why is because you're not supposed to engage or look. And one of the worst qualities of that is the notion that if you do, it's gotcha.
So awful.
All right, so let's kind of describe what we're seeing, just for the people listening to the podcast.
So
you can see it on YouTube. We'll put it on YouTube.
In the far right-hand side of this photograph is what obviously appears, is certainly at first blush, to be a man in a morph suit. If you wanted to, you could say that he's wearing, because even
Or
if you
a
look,
cloak.
Yeah,
if you look closer at it, you can actually see kind of a ripple in the top of the head that suggests like a cloth thing over the head,
or even down the arms,
or down
too.
the arms too.
You
Yeah,
see some
it's
ripples.
a strange mass, definitely humanoid, but to put it at that motion, it's also just peeking in, which is the quintessential Appalachian ghost story.
Yeah.
You turn around and there's a shadow poking around the corner of a tree, behind a tree, looking at you. That is what is considered the danger zone of experience, because once you see it, it most definitely sees you seeing it. It's an engagement, which is why they tell you not to look, why you shouldn't, because in a lot of ways, the act of looking at an entity like this is an invitation. It is I seek you as you seek me, and then, many people allude to the idea that you're just going to die. Like the monster's going to get you, because that's how they tell it. Like when you hear about don't go into the woods at night, don't find yourself in the woods. If you find yourself in the woods, always look forward, always walk straight. Never leave the path. Things like that. And the warnings kind of trail off at don't.
Sure.
They don't tell you what the or else is,
Right.
And the suggestion is you'll die, but that's not true. I think in most of these cases, what it is once you've engaged, you've stepped into, or technically you've stepped out of a real world. You have exposed yourself to a lot of nuanced, haunted experiences. So yeah, that picture is disturbing, and like I said, people who look at it will quickly say, "Oh well, that's just a man, covered up in black," but
it's also like 9 feet tall, because
it's very large.
Because if
Super large.
So if you look at it,
It has the texture of a tree, but it's not.
Right.
tree. It's not a
right.
tree.
No.
That's what I was going to say too. But like also the where it's standing in the photo, she's trying to take a photo like between the trees of like this swing set. And this is like a standard size like park swing set, like with that wooden like frame that would at minimum be like 7 feet.
At minimum, yeah.
At minimum. And this thing is towering over that. So it's got like a solid like 1.5 to 2 feet on it. So it's
again, the temptation is to suggest that it's closer, but when we get to the other picture, we can see how and where this thing is, and it does. It derives itself. So I got asked a lot about Slender Man. Why did Slender Man, which is a complete fabrication, but why did it take? Why are there so many people who are dedicated to the idea of it? And it's because the elements of Slender Man do come from our consciousness of things that we're afraid of, things that we know to be
a possibility.
Right. Because there are stories that kind of hearken to it. So when Slender Man arrived, it was the perfect storm of lots of people know these strange and creepy, like the very tall entity in the woods, the very tall, featureless entity that kind of follows you around and hides in plain sight. That's, the scariest thing is the notion that whatever it is hiding in plain sight. You're looking right at where it's standing, and you don't see it, and then at one moment you do, and the danger that always seems to be spoken of in these tales is once you see it, you're connected. You are forever.
I was just about to mention that.
Connected to it, which then becomes an interesting issue because the three of us just looked at a picture of it.
Now we're connected.
Well, that's just it.
Welcome to the club.
Where does it draw the line of connection?
Exactly.
How do you, because there are plenty of stories, Ring is a great story where, anybody who watches this video will get haunted. I want to say Doctor Who did it with Weeping Angels. The image of an angel becomes an angel.
What was the cursed movie that everybody in the movie theater died after watching it? What movie was that?
Oh, we've mentioned it before. It's and it starts with an A.
Yes.
Anthropy. And
Yes.
Yeah. I'm sorry about this, Lauren, but it reminds me a lot of the ending of Insidious.
Sure.
Yes.
Where that lady just gets closer in all of the photos.
Right.
And it's like that's terrifying. Like, that was one of the scariest parts of that movie.
It was so well done.
And it's at the very end, and that was one of the scariest parts of the movie. You just see this woman just get closer and closer in all of the photos as he gets older and stuff like that. So it makes me wonder, is there a connection now that she captured a photo of it?
Well, clearly there is.
And it's at a church camp, right?
Yes.
Is that what you said?
It's at a retreat center of sorts. That it's a property that mostly gets rented out for church retreats.
Exactly.
But what I hate for you the most is is the fact that you saw this a year and a half ago in your kitchen.
Yeah.
That's what really
sucks.
disturbs me.
Strongly suggests that that connection.
Yeah. Because why would it be in her kitchen? Like at that point.
Well,
Yeah.
We should, because of all this connection now to this photo, when we meet with her, we should be taking photos and all that. Maybe we'll capture it watching us.
I don't want it. I really,
Well, because it does, because of the way the folklore of the region falls out, you're not dealing with a ghost at all.
No.
You're dealing with some natural phenomenon creature.
So religious camp.
Well, even
That's what I wanna know.
to come to it is, I think that anywhere that people routinely come and visit is going to draw these entities, regardless of what purpose it is. So like a fixed structure in the woods, like a series of camp cabins and things like that. That's why so many horror movies are cabin in the woods. That's why, because we understand that the isolation of being out in the middle of the woods puts you in danger of experiencing these things that are centuries old understandings. There's an understanding all throughout Appalachia that you do not mess with it. You just don't do it.
Yeah. Don't look at the tree lines.
Right. Exactly.
Like, don't.
And it's interesting because it's so commonly accepted that it's not sensationalized at all. Nobody bothers to tempt it or test it. It's like, all right, good on you. And there's a good portion of that knowledge where you're like, well, the woods are full of dangerous things.
Oh, yeah.
Wild boars and wild cats, even a bobcat. People are like, a bobcat's not that big. It'll rip you apart. Don't approach a bobcat.
Right.
And so with that wealth of danger, bears, with that wealth of danger, coming up with stories that are like, don't go in the woods. If you hear something walking behind you, just keep moving, things of that nature. Because when you equate it in simple folklore, it's like, let's protect the kids, let's protect people, because if you turn and you face an animal, a predator animal, if you try to get away from it by turning, it'll attack, which is the thing. Sure. Don't look at it. because what you need to do is just find the quickest egress out.
Sure.
But if you turn and you look, you can't back down either. All of a sudden you are now locked with that animal, and until that animal goes away, you're in mortal jeopardy.
And also, I think a lot of that, like, you just accept that those are the rules, stems from the culture of that region of the South. Is like, if my Meemaw told me to not go out into the woods and look at the tree lines, then I'm not going to look at the tree lines because you trust your elders.
Right,
it's like, it's, they're not going to steer you wrong, but it had to come from somewhere.
It had to come from somewhere, and there are scary connotations to it too, because we know, like, the big bad wolf. Was derived of keeping people safe and in interior, don't go out. But then there comes this notion that it's like, we only recently started investigating serial killers. We only recently started, like, thinking of the psychology of a person whose urges to kill overtake them. Back in the day, if there was a serial killer who were repeatedly killing people, it was easier to say there's a wolf in the woods than to imagine a human being doing these things. Which then brings us to Appalachia, where one of the things that I've heard is, like, if you hear whistling,
God, don't whistle, y'all.
Don't
please.
whistle. Do not whistle. These things that come out, and it's like, does it stem from a serial killer in the mountains, or there's lots of stories of feral families and feral people in the woods and stuff, and so you start to, like, really start to try to plug in all these things. The only difference is it's so widely accepted by people who grew up there, who lived there, and I've met many who have had the experience, and what it seemed to do for them was it made them highly susceptible to haunting. It made them open to other spirits. It was like having your third eye opened. It was an instance at which, again, they stepped out of the world that everyone else was living in and now are straddling a line. Much like Madison does all her life. But for people who were not born with that gift, to have it put upon them can be maddening. It could drive you insane.
Well, yeah. I mean, like, it's what I've kind of understood it as is, like, it almost puts, like, you become like a candle in the dark of that sort, where it's like, okay, now everything. That's why you don't whistle, is because you're giving the enemy, essentially, that entity you don't want to be in contact with, it's giving them the exact location to find you. And it can now track you because it has that essence of your voice, because your voice is very powerful in a lot of ways. So now on the topic of Lauren's creature, I don't know where she lives, and that's what makes me question. I'm like, do you still live in Appalachia? Like, are you No.
Well, I don't want to, but Georgia.
Okay. Well, we're at the cusp.
We're at the
so it's like it's.
But still, even in the most positive lights,
right?
You are dealing with an attachment. You're dealing with something that you encountered, and it followed you a good ways.
Oh yeah.
To be present in your life, and the sad thing is, if you only saw it, a year and a half ago, that means there's about 13 years of it following you around that you probably didn't see it, or worse, you saw it but kind of glossed over it in your mind. That is something that we are very good at, is looking dead at something very scary and being like, no, it's not there. There's nothing there.
That's not it.
That's not happening.
That's my eyes playing a trick on me.
That's my eyes. There's more of gravy than of grave of you. That definitely is the sensation that for 13 years it's been charging. That it's gaining energy, and if you start to see it, it seems like it's becoming more solid in your life, and you're becoming and I'd be interested to know if you've had. And we'll talk about it. If you've had more experiences, would you say there was an uptick in experiences after this picture? What kinds of things can you remember? Because sometimes people don't attribute. They don't think, oh, you know what? Right after that, I started seeing more ghosts, or right after that, I started seeing these things.
Sure.
Because a lot of times it happens naturally. It feels natural. It just feels like, oh, I was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Oh, I was. It's like that's not true, because there are plenty of people who you can drop in the most haunted place in the world, and they're not going to see anything. They're not going to sense anything. They're not going to feel anything. And it's not for lack of belief. It's just something about the overall energy of the individual. I know plenty of people who are just so desperate for a paranormal experience, and they go through great lengths to get it, but they may never. And I think that is why equipment is such a great tool, having equipment, because you feel more in control of connection and contact with the other side and paranormal things. But the truth of the matter is, no piece of equipment will ever be as sensitive as the human body.
Yeah.
And what can be achieved once you're in tune, once you've been tuned. And seeing something like that puts you pretty sharply in tune.
For sure. I met a guy a couple days ago. He owns a bait and tackle store, and he is of the Pentecostal denomination. And he said that if you ever want a scary story, talk to a Pentecostal person, because they are so in tune with like demonic entities and all of that, that they all have a demon story.
Yeah.
They all have a demon story. And so I'm wondering, I'm kind of making a connection here with this photo and it being a church-or-tree.
Oh, sure.
Like is there, well, not even that it's Pentecostal, but just off of the ideas that of what he said, that maybe there was something visiting the church-or-tree because it's religious.
So it's worth noting that anytime you ritualize something, which means have an establishment that you continually reinforce through activity, through going to the church, through whatever it is that you've ritualized, becomes a part of your energy cycle. It becomes a part of what you're capable of seeing. It's a question of manifestation. If you get together with a bunch of like-minded people who are working towards a goal, and you've ritualized the concept of demons, the concept of experience, the concept of how to deal with these things, the likelihood of you experiencing it increases exponentially. And to the point, yeah, absolutely. When you talk about like a religious retreat, the concept would be that people go there and have concentrated bouts of faith. They come and they express their faith, they practice their faith, and in doing so, they manifest a place for spiritual entities. For instance, a lot of religious orders use their religion as a shunning of other things. You'll hear it a lot of times when someone's like, well, my faith doesn't allow for that. I don't believe in that because in my faith, there is no demon. In my faith, ghosts don't exist, which is a ritualized manifestation of a reality around them. And because they go and they ritualize it and they come together in groups and they practice it, they are oftentimes protected by their faith. Their faith shields them from these things. But every now and then, no matter how faithful you are, you'll go to a place that has a little more faith than you, that has a little more energy than the energy you're putting out. And one of them is the thing that shakes your faith. A lot of people will get into like a terrible wreck or have some life-threatening occurrence, and all of a sudden they have more perception. They have a wider perception, and it was because their faith was shaken. Their faith said that God was protecting them, and then they got very badly hurt. And now they had a moment, a lapse of, that faith is gone. And then there's a chink in the armor and everything floods in, all the possibilities and all those things. And all of a sudden they have this thing. I used to call it the radio dial. You get clonked hard enough and the radio dial goes over and gets off the reality channel. It's that same notion that a faith congregation is tuning in to a very specific radio channel. And they all live on that radio channel. I always use 105.3, which is the local station, but the 105.3 reality station. But any number of events can make you kind of slip over to 105.1. And now you have 105.3. You can hear it coming through, but now you've got like extra static. And if you get too far away, and this is the big one, if you get too far away from the same station as everyone else, if everybody else is 105.3 and you get all the way down to 95.5, you're going to seem absolutely insane.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to relate to you. They're not going to understand you. You are literally on a different bandwidth, and you are experiencing, seeing, and trying to cope with things that those people can't even conceive of as reality. So it's interesting because a thing like taking that picture is just a nudge on this dial. It's just
it really is. What so what do y'all think it is? Like, what would be your best guess?
I think it's some kind of just like it's like a non-human. It's just like I don't even know if it's like a malevolent entity because I don't know what the experience has been after taking the photo. But it's just like a non-human entity, because that is not to say that there aren't, just entities that are entrenched into the land, that are, entrenched into that region of the world. So that's what I perceive it as, because something that people tend to forget with entities that aren't necessarily human, good or bad, they don't look appealing. There are so many depictions of even angels. Like when you look into the Bible, angels are freaking horrifying, y'all.
That's why they say, "Be not afraid" when they show up. If they're beautiful blonde, "Be not afraid." I was like, "No, you're gorgeous. Why would I be afraid?"
Exactly. But then there are, depictions of demons that are actually really beautiful, and then there are some that are horrific looking.
Well, I was about to say that's the scary thing is the more it tries to appear human, the more likely it is to trying to deceive you.
Right.
It's trying to hide its malice by appearing. And so it forms itself in, because you think of like protectors of the woods. Mm-hmm. You think of energy forces in the woods that are trying to keep the woods from intrusion. And it mimics the threat. It mimics the thing that is threatening. And if it's looking a little human, it's not getting it quite right.
Yes.
Which is like the plaid eye is a great example. If you're not familiar with the Gullah Geechee plaid eye, it's an entity that's trying to look human but doesn't get it quite right.
Yeah, it's like forgotten eye. It's like that's
forgotten eye, maybe an extra mouth somewhere.
Right. And so it's just I'm gonna go with just like what I do know. After we talk to Lauren, I'll have a different opinion, I'm sure. But it's definitely a non-human forest entity of some sort, which are quite common. I'm going to go in the realm of a look back more than likely, but that's what I'm working with just from the very small sliver of knowledge that I have of the background of this story.
Absolutely. I'd say that my immediate response was, that's a look back. That is the quintessential, whenever described, a shadowy figure that is just barely peeking around from behind a tree. Mm-hmm.
So that is that is a very frightening experience. I'm so sorry, Lauren, for your loss. But basically, though, if you have a photo or a creepy story like that, and you would like us to read these on the podcast, please send them to us, because we've mentioned this before, but it probably is because we didn't have an exact place for y'all to send it. So we do now. We're going to call it Ghost Mail. So it's ghostmail@hauntedcitypodcast.com. Send us your stories, send us your photos, things like that, and we will react to them. So this is great. I really enjoyed this. I love seeing creepy photos. So
send us the creepy photos. We're all about it.
Right. So, but with that, y'all, we will see you in the next episode. So my name is Madison Timmons.
I'm Chris Susi.
And stay spooky, y'all.